How to make ride sharing better for the passengers, the drivers, and the business overall. What up, folks? Once again, it's your boy Tim with another ride sharing video. 7+ years in the business, ride sharing off and on for Uber and Lyft over the years. And I'm often asked that when I make these videos. You're often criticizing Uber or Lyft or providing advice. So what the hell would you do if you were in charge? We're going to tackle that today. I'm going to give you the top 8 ways to make this business better for passengers, drivers, and the business in general, without throwing out the obvious, which is pay. 99% of Uber and Lyft drivers probably feel the base pay is way too damn low anyway. So there's no need to even throw that one out there. I'm going to give you other ways that could greatly improve the experience in this business that does not include raising up the base fare, even though, yeah, of course, we all believe that should be raised substantially. Number 1, starting out, drivers should know their destination, period. When you take a trip, the moment you accept that trip, you should know where that passenger is located and where that passenger wants to go. Because there are a lot of reasons that the drivers do not want to take trips. And in regards to customer service for the passengers, it would be a good idea as well. What the hell am I talking about? A lot of drivers such as myself do not believe in driving way outside of my primary service area. Mainly because you don't know if you're going to get a trip coming back, and I don't want to drive double the distance for the same pay. So when I get to a passenger, the last thing I want to do is have them get out of the vehicle because I just found out they're going too far away. That's bad customer service. Passengers been sitting there 15, 20 minutes, who knows how long, waiting for a ride. And when the ride gets there, they tell the passenger, well, I'm not taking you there. Not only is that bad customer service, that could also be a safety issue for the driver. I personally, yours truly, have had passengers get angry and hostile when I demanded that they get out of the vehicle. I'm not driving you 30 miles to another town. I know I'm not going to get a ride from that town and have to drive 30 miles back at my own expense. The passengers don't give a damn about that. They want to go where they're going, and they believe as long as you're in service, you should take them anywhere they want to go. If it's not profitable for you, you should have thought about that before you started driving. So they don't give a damn. So at the end of the day, it's a safety issue and it is a customer service issue for ride-sharing companies like Uber and Lyft to deliberately hide where passengers are going. So that's number 1. Number 2, encourage tipping. I started driving back in 2014. At the time, they didn't even have tipping available in the app. Used to get passengers all the time, ask me to stop them off at an ATM machine or tell you, I don't carry cash and I would love to tip you, but there's no way to tip through the app. Took about 2 or 3 years begging Uber and Lyft to put it in the app. So now that passengers can tip through the app, why won't Uber and Lyft encourage tipping? Just like when you go to a restaurant, when you fill out your receipt, there's already calculated 10, 15, 20% amounts to tip the waitress. The restaurant, in other words, they are encouraging tipping. They know that waitresses do not make a lot of money, so they're trying to encourage patrons to tip. Uber and Lyft clearly knows that we as drivers do not make a lot of damn money. This would not cost them a cent to put it in the app. You ever went to Applebee's and use the digital screen to pay your cost of your meal? The tips are right on there. You just check off if you want to tip 10, 15, 20, 22%. That's encouraging tipping. Uber and Lyft could easily do that. But in addition to just putting it in the app, the amounts, when I say encourage tipping, I mean actually tell the passenger things like, by tipping drivers, you ensure that more drivers will be on the road, and maybe next time you don't have to wait 15, 20, 25 minutes to get a ride. In my market, there are whole hours that go by where nobody is coming to pick passengers up. Pay. Tip. That would help offset the fares that we're talking about. And a lot of passengers would probably have no problem doing that. I started out in the taxi business before Uber and Lyft even were invented. And in the taxi business, the amount of tips were substantially higher than they are in this business. And I'm not talking about the amount of the tip. I'm talking about the quantity of tips. The quantity of passengers, the percentage of passengers who got in your vehicle and tipped, I don't care if it's $1. There were out of 10 taxi passengers versus 10 Uber or Lyft passengers, the 10 taxis passengers always had a higher number of passengers that tipped. Uber and Lyft, particularly Uber, started out in this business telling passengers this is a cashless transaction and you do not have to worry about the tip because it's in the fare. That was bullshit from day one. How can you give passengers a ride that is substantially cheaper than a taxi and tell them a tip is involved in it? So encourage tipping would be a big, big plus. Number 3, complete transparency in regards to the breakdown of the fare. This is, to me, very important, would certainly improve morale, but you're not going to likely get this from ride sharing because it would reveal exactly what they're doing, ripping off drivers. When I say transparency, when you take a passenger from point A to point B, when that passenger gets out, you're notified how much money you made. You're not notified how much money that passenger actually paid for the service or what Uber or Lyft's cut is. That's not being transparent. And the reason they don't want to be transparent is oftentimes they have made more than you for you using your car to take that passenger from point A to point B. But if they had complete transparency, you would know that. Having said that, folks, we are partners with these companies. You're not an employee of Uber or Lyft. You are a subcontractor. You guys are essentially equals when it comes to delivering a service to the passenger. The passenger makes contact with Uber or Lyft requesting a ride, and you show up and give them that ride. And both you and your ride sharing company split that fare that the passenger paid. Now, obviously, all of the overhead, gas, car, vehicle maintenance, insurance, is on the driver. So it makes absolutely no sense, obviously, how Uber simply connecting the trip should make more money, but they often do. And because they are not transparent, you usually don't know that. They can impose $1 surcharge without telling you. They can do all sorts of things because you don't have any way of actually knowing without going through some serious hoops and bounds to find out. So complete transparency would be a huge plus, because one of the major issues in regards to this business, in addition to folks complaining about the pay, is that a lot of drivers do not trust the companies they're subcontracting with. How many drivers trust what Uber and Lyft state? I've been driving, like I said, since 2014. When I started driving, they were telling us that you could average $90,000 a year as a rideshare driver. That's what Uber was saying. Complete fabrication, complete lie. And Uber later had to pay a huge settlement to the Federal Trade Commission for greatly inflating salaries, or to the feds. So they started out lying from day one. In addition to all of that bullshit about the tip is in the fare and other things, but they started out lying. And as a result, a lot of folks that drive do not trust these companies. We could talk about stealing tips and all kinds of other things, but transparency would really help strengthening the relationship between drivers and passengers. Drivers and the company. They need to do that. Next, all passengers should have a picture on their profile. When you pick someone up, there should be a picture there. Your picture is there. They can absolutely see who the driver is. But when you pick someone up, they don't have to have a picture. They don't have to have a real name or anything. Once again, this is a safety issue, folks. Because if you pick someone up and you believe that that's the wrong person getting in your vehicle, like I just stated before on the other case, people have been waiting for rides and they don't like being told, I'm not taking you from point A to point B. I had somebody throw some shit at my car because I told them, you're not the person I'm supposed to pick up. And they swore up and down they were. Pictures would help that. Now, I understand people book rides for other people and all of that shit, but you certainly, every passenger you pick up, in that little circle profile, it should be a picture there. So a whole lot of passengers have no picture and no real name. Slim or Peaches or some shit like that. That should not be. Next, either city officials, what the hell I have, all the city officials some type of driver voter scheme or someone, a trusted third party, should be involved in all fare changes. What do I mean by that? When I started driving for Uber in 2014, drivers were earning $2.20 per mile. In my market today in 2022, October of 2022, we're making 72 cents per mile, from 220 to 72 cents. Obviously, the drivers would never have voted all of those decreases in there. Now, in the taxi business, changes went through the city council. So that's why you see on the taxis, the door shows the fare. Anytime the taxi business decide we need to charge extra money because of inflation in this town, gas prices, or whatever reason they want to charge money, they have to run it by the city council. The city council then votes on whether they'll let the taxis raise the rate up a nickel or a dime per mile or whatever the case may be. But in other words, there is a process involving a third party, being the city council. In our business, the ride-sharing companies, Uber and Lyft, make all the damn decisions irrespective of everybody. When you wake up the next day, you're required to click yes to a terms of service agreement. If you don't, you can't drive. If you do, there's this ridiculously long contract that you need to read that somewhere in there is telling you you no longer make what you made yesterday. It's less. That's a problem. Once again, that's lack of transparency also, but that is the issue because drivers are not going to sit there and read, a whole fucking encyclopedia of data to find out what's in there. But every time you sign or check those new terms of service agreements, chances are something about your pay or your benefits has went down and something for Uber or Lyft probably went up. And they have us checking off these new terms of service contracts oftentimes, many times a year. That right there is another problem, which is why I'm suggesting either a city officials, a driver voting scheme of some sort, or a trusted third party should be involved in all fare changes. It should go through that issue as opposed to Uber or Lyft. Like I stated before, most drivers do not trust Uber or Lyft. They have something obvious to gain by affecting the fares, by being able to change the fares. Conflict of interest. You are a subcontractor to Uber or Lyft. You both split the fares that are coming from the passengers. But Uber and Lyft is making all the changes to how much you get, how much they charge the customer, et cetera, et cetera. And all you get to do is sit back and say, yes, I'll take it, or I quit right now. That's not equal. And that's also why in my other video, I talked about how Uber and Lyft are literally starting to be facing legislation from a lot of states to deem them as employers. Because doing stuff like that is not a subcontractor-contractor relationship. That begins to be on the fringes of an employer-employee relationship, where an employer makes all the decisions and an employee has one or two options, either take it or quit. That's what an employer-employee does. Subcontractor-contractor relationship should not be like that. But Uber and Lyft are firing too many people under this same mindset. We're going to do this, and your options are to take it or leave it or get fired. That's an employer-employee relationship. And if they don't change that, the subcontracting label is probably going to end up disappearing from a lot of drivers. Okay, number 7. This does not always apply to most drivers. In fact, most of us will never deal with this, but I do believe it's a major issue because it could apply to you any given time. The deductible of $2,500. When you're hauling passengers around, you are covered by the ride-sharing company's insurance, Uber and Lyft. If you're involved in an accident and have to file a claim, the deductible is $2,500. For all of us who drive a vehicle in our regular free time, we all have insurance. You have either full coverage or you have liability insurance. Most Americans either have a $500 deductible or a $1,000 deductible. There is an option to have a $2,500 deductible in most insurance cases. Most Americans don't do it for the obvious reason. Coming up with $2,500 at a moment's notice is usually more than a lot of Americans can muster up. In ride sharing, where you got drivers driving all over the country, in some cases barely making minimum wage, I would submit to you that a large portion of Uber and Lyft drivers, if they were involved in an accident, could not come up with that $2,500, meaning the entire insurance claim could be in jeopardy. Because if you can't pay the deductible, they may not actually address your claim, which now means you're completely out of work, not making any money at all. But $2,500 deductible for a global company insuring millions of drivers, or whatever the hell the amount of drivers that Uber and Lyft have, just even in the United States, it's got to obviously be hundreds of thousands of drivers. That's insane. $2,500 in deductible for what we earn as drivers is insane. That needs to change. And last but not least, this one is probably would be considered as a pipe dream, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. Some sort of fare increase. I labeled it raises based on seniority or trips, but really a fare increase. In other words, if you've done 3,000-4,000 trips with Uber and Lyft, okay, this person makes 2 or 3 cents per mile more than someone who just started. Period. Just as an incentive to keep going, as a incentive for loyalty or whatever you want to call it. But if you've been riding for Uber or Lyft and you are a full-timer, and I'm not talking about myself. Yes, I've been driving off and on for Uber and Lyft since 2014 or whatever the hell, but I'm not a regular driver, and it's been a long, long time since I did it full-time. So I'm not talking about myself or because I've driven alone. I'm talking about folks who are doing it full time. I'm talking about folks who are going out there putting between 30 and 60 hours behind the wheel every day. Folks who are racking up hundreds of, if not thousands of trips every damn season. For folks like that who are showing a significant amount of loyalty to the business, if they're making 73 cents a mile in that town, get them in 75 cents a mile. It's not going to kill the ride-sharing companies to do that, and they get what they absolutely need in this business, and that is loyalty. The average turnaround time for drivers, 6 damn months. 6 months. That's what happened to yours truly. I did it full-time. Within 6 months, I realized this is bullshit, and I got out of it. And from that point on, I only drive when they're offering promos, bonuses, surges, or some type of streak or something of that nature. I don't drive for base fare. You just will never make any money doing that. But this would be a way to reward drivers who are willing to put in the work. What do you think, guys? Those are my top 8 reasons that I believe that we could implement, or they could implement in this business. And I would give you one as a bonus that would probably fit under the category of transparency. A damn phone number. All of this where we can only contact or we can only work with you through emails and texts is bullshit. During the era of the taxi business, every single taxi company in this country, even the ones that exist right now, the driver can always pick up the phone and call somebody. And obviously the taxi companies don't make anywhere near the money that Uber or Lyft are making. There is no acceptable reason for why you have to deal with these companies only through email or text message. That comes across as you're trying to hide from us, as if you don't want to talk to people. You don't want to hear what they may have to say. Once again, transparency. This is the kind of stuff that affects morale. All of these little small taxi companies all over the country, whether you're in a big area like New York or some small area, most metropolitan areas have some type of a taxi business. Any town over 100,000, 150,000 residents probably have a few cars driving around that are not Uber or Lyft related. And those drivers can pick up a phone, dial some numbers, and talk to somebody at that company. Why the hell would a global company like Uber and Lyft, global companies like that, make it so difficult to call someone? Now, it's changed a little bit over time, but it's still pretty pathetic. But when I started out, there was no one you could call. They would not take your calls at all. And not only that, but even if you text them, or not text them, but even if you emailed them, their responses came across as literally pre-written. They would oftentimes respond to us with messages that had nothing to do with you actually sent them. It's almost like talking to a robot, and it's trained to ask you questions, pause, and then ask you something else. It's not even listening to what the hell you got to say. So if you got on there and said, I think Biden is sexy, the thing would keep going because it ain't listening to what you have to say. That's how Uber started in particular. I believe Lyft did the same thing, but they would send you pre-written responses and you're reading this shit like, what the hell is this? This ain't got nothing to do with what I asked you. Those are my top 8 reasons, folks. Subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you think in the comments. I always respond to all comments in kind. Whatever you got to say, hey, I don't run from it. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? But anyway, I'll catch you in the next video. Gave you my top 8 reasons that I truly believe would actually strengthen the morale in this industry and make driver longevity something that might actually happen. It's your boy Tim. Catch you later.